Hey friends, welcome back to the Made Up Here YouTube channel. My name is Sarah and I have a website, Made Up Here, and my YouTube channel is also called Made Up Here. If you're new, welcome. And if you're returning, thanks so much for coming back. Today we are going to do a really quick and easy project. I had a lot of cotton scraps and webbing scraps laying around from bag making, and I thought, oh, I need a really nice quick project, and that is when I decided to create these dog collars. These are completely customizable to the size of your pet, and everybody has at least somebody that they love has a pet, or you may have pets or multiple pets of your own. This project requires very minimal hardware, just one D-ring, one parachute clip, and one adjustable strap slider. So these are things that a lot of you who might make bags or will have laying around already. The parachute clip, perhaps not unless you make a lot of backpacks, but they're quite inexpensive and they can be purchased in bulk on Amazon, and I will link that below for you. This collar that I'm holding here is for a medium to large size dog. It is adjustable up to 27 inches around, but it does adjust down much smaller than that. To get the measurements that you will need, I suggest you measure around your pet's neck, and you want to increase your measurement by about 2 inches. I will list a link to a little chart with all the measurements for these collars down below. And you could even make these for cats, little tiny little collars. You would have to adjust the webbing that you use if you're going to use it for a cat, unless it's a great big cat. But you can purchase webbing in 1 inch, 1.5 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1/2 inch. And I think for a cat or a kitten, the 1/2 inch would probably be best. So all you're going to need is some cotton fabric scraps, at least 3 inches wide. You're going to need a little bit of interfacing, some webbing, and the hardware that I just mentioned below. So let's get started. This should be a nice quick tutorial. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I really appreciate if you did. I'm super close to hitting my 1,000 subscribers. And hitting the like button or commenting on this video really helps my channel out. So let's get started. Okay, so let's talk supplies. Um, there's very few things that you need for this project. So the first thing is I have a piece of fabric that is cut 3 inches by 28 inches long. And this is going to get me a dog collar that is about 26 inches in circumference. And I have interfacing to go along with that. Doesn't really matter what kind of interfacing you use. This is a non-woven inexpensive interfacing, as long as it gives your cotton fabric a little bit of structure. You're going to need a parachute clip. So this clip clips apart and snaps back together. So you'll need both those pieces. You will need an adjustable slider. You will need a D-ring. I do use double-sided tape. This is 1/8 inch double-sided tape. I have a 26 inch in length piece of black 1 inch webbing. And this is just a nylon webbing. You can use cotton. You can use anything at all, really. If you have 1 inch seatbelt webbing, that's great too. You'll need a lighter to burn the ends. I have my stiletto seam ripper. I am using some Tex 45 thread, my rotary cutter just in case I need it, and always a pair of scissors. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my interfacing in place. So you want a really nice hot iron. And your interfacing should be cut just slightly smaller than the 3-inch strip that you've cut. Now I cut mine at about 2 7/8 of an inch. There's not much edge left over. So I'm going to start by placing this interfacing about an inch from the end of the fabric. You want to leave this inch of fabric because we are going to fold that over and hide the raw edge when we sew this together. So I'm just going to press this in place, working one section at a time. I'm going to start on the back side so I can make sure that my interfacing is placed nicely, and then I'll flip it over and press it from the right side. So you should have 1 inch of space left on each end of your main fabric without interfacing. So mine is a little bit long, I can already tell, and when I get there, I am going to just be careful not to iron down all the interfacing, and I'm going to cut my interfacing to fit. So I'm trying really hard not to stretch my cotton fabric because I don't want it to warp or look wonky. All right. So I do have a little bit too much interfacing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a pair of scissors, cut it so that I have at least an inch overhang of my main fabric. All right, so now that I have that on the wrong side, I'm going to just come back and press that on the right side to make sure I have no creases. Now this is also a great project to use up those fat quarters. You know, those little fat quarters that are irresistible when you go to the fabric shop, and some of them don't make the cut for your quilt or your bag. You would probably have to piece together your length, but it's barely noticeable in the final product. So go ahead and use up those fat quarters as well. And you can get 2 collars and a leash out of 1 fat quarter if you are careful with piecing them together. All right, so I'm happy with that. I feel like my interfacing is stuck down really nicely, and we're going to move on to the next step. All right, so for our next step, we are going to begin pressing this into shape. So for this step, you're going to need your main fabric, and it's also good to have your webbing close by so that you can keep an eye on your pressing and making sure that you're pressing this straight. Alternatively, if you would like, you could also draw a line to make sure that it's super accurate, but I don't really feel like it's super necessary. It's all going to get sewed down to the webbing as long as it's not bigger than 1 inch. So the first thing I do is I take, starting at one end, and I start folding up one of my edges just slightly less than 1 inch. So probably 7/8 of an inch. And if you want to make sure, you can take your webbing and place it on top. And we want to just make sure that your fold is not bigger than your 1 inch webbing. So I'm going to start at one end. I'm going to fold this down and I'm going to press that in place all the way down the length of my fabric strip. To the end. And so now I have one side pressed in about 7/8 of an inch. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to take my 1/8 inch double-sided tape, and I am going to run this double-sided tape all along the top edge as close as I can so that I can fold this edge down and hide any raw edges, because depending on what kind of fabric you have, you don't want that sticking out and looking all wonky on you when you go to sew this down to your webbing. So I am going to run this tape all the way along that top edge, getting as close as I can to the edge. And then I will come back to you and we will do the next step. Okay, so I'm going to try and get you down a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing here. Let's see if that's better. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel back the paper on my double-sided tape, and then I'm going to fold that other side over just by that 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to peel it back little by little because I don't want it to get all messed up down the line. But hopefully you can see I'm just folding it over about the width of the double-sided tape. Now the only reason I do this is because it does make for a really nice clean finished edge. You're not really going to see this, but in testing this in the past, I did notice that if I didn't do this step, this edge would fray sometimes and it would poke out under my webbing and it just didn't look very nice. So this will give a nice, clean, professional finished edge. Okay, so what you should now have is a strip that has one side pressed down at about 7/8 of an inch, and your other side we stuck down with double-sided tape. I used 1/8 inch double-sided tape. And we're going to move on to the next step. All right, so now that we have our edge pressed down with double-sided tape, what we're going to do is take that edge and we're going to fold it down along the other folded side. Now it's not going to meet all the way to the other edge. So what I mean by that is you're going to have about 1/8 of an inch space here. That's fine. That's all going to be covered with your webbing. So I'm going to go and fold that, and I'm going to give that just a really quick press. There is double-sided tape under there, so it might melt a little bit. It'll hold it on there really well. Okay. And what I'm going to do is start clipping on this edge just to hold that in place after I press. And once I have that all folded and pressed and clipped, I will come back to you and we will get started with the sewing part of the video. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take my webbing and I'm just going to burn the end just to make sure it doesn't fray on me. And I'll burn the other end as well. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to take the folded edge and lay that down along our webbing. Now you're going to have about 1 inch overhang. So I hope that makes sense. You're going to have 1 inch of fabric over the end. So basically where you have not interfaced, that is the part that is going to not have the webbing covering it. So you just want to make sure that your fabric that is folded side down on top of your webbing with a bit of an overhang. And you're going to clip that in place, keeping it really centered all the way along the edge of the webbing. Let's see if I can get a better angle here to show you what I'm doing. So I'm just actually just taking the clips that I had on there already and placing the webbing underneath and reclipping all the way along the length of the collar. And I'm going to do this off camera, and I will come back to you when we are ready to sew. Okay, so I have now clipped my fabric to the black webbing. And what we're going to do is we're going to start on one side and we're going to sew all the way up the edge at 1/8 of an inch. And then we're going to sew all the way down the other edge at 1/8 of an inch to attach the fabric to the webbing. Okay, so I am going to start using a 4 stitch length. I'm going to start at one end and I'm going to sew all the way down one edge and then come back and sew all the way down the other edge at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So I do want to mention, as I'm sewing, I'm kind of pushing down on my fabric so that it doesn't shift around. Because this is nylon webbing, there is a possibility for this to shift, but if you kind of put a little bit of pressure with your fingers as you're sewing, then the fabric tends not to shift around. All right, so I have now sewn about 1/8 of an inch all the way along both edges of the collar. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pinking shears and I'm just going to snip at the end here just so it doesn't fray too much. Just take a little tiny bit off. Okay, so now we are ready for our hardware install. And I am going to take you off to the side for that. Okay, so the very first step of our hardware install is going to be to attach the strap slider. So what you're going to do is pick one of your ends, it doesn't really matter which one, and you're going to put one end through one of the slots of the strap slider and then down the other side. So now you should have your strap slider on. Now, when you flip this over, we need to fold this over. So I'm going to leave about 1.5 to 2 inches, and I'm going to fold this over to the back. So we have our strap slider here on the right side, and I've taken that little bit of fabric hanging off the end and folded it down. And then we're going to place that on the back. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew a little box here. And that is going to secure your slider down. So I will take that to the machine and sew that down, and we'll come back and we'll install the rest of the hardware. Okay, so I'm going to sew down the strap to the slider, and I'm just going to go back and forth a little bit. I'm back stitching really well because I don't want this moving or pulling apart. And at the same time, I'm holding it flat so that it doesn't shift around on me. Okay, so I've done my first line of stitching, back stitching a few times. Now I'm going to turn and I'm going to come down almost to the edge. I'm going to back stitch a couple times here. Then I'm going to turn again. Backstitch a little bit. And I keep backstitching every few stitches. I want this really secure. Okay, and my last turn, I'm going to come back up and complete the box. So as you can see, I'm doing my best to try and stitch along that 1/8 inch line where we sewed the fabric down to the webbing. Just it makes for a nice clean look. All right. So now our strap is really nice and secure. Our strap slider is nice and secure. And we are going to attach and sew on the rest of the hardware. Okay, so now what we need to do is we are going to attach this prong part of the clip to the other end. Now to do this, you want your strap flipped up with the wrong side or the webbing side facing you. And you're going to go all the way down to the other end. And then you're going to take the end of your strap and you're going to place it in the first slot from the bottom up. And then you're going to bring it back down in the second slot. And, oh, sometimes that's tricky because your fabric on the end doesn't have any interfacing. Okay, there we go. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to slide this all the way down close to my strap slider end. Okay, so I'm just pulling it all the way down right next to my strap slider, my slide adjuster. Okay, so now that I'm down at this end, what I need to do is I'm going to come back into the slide adjuster, strap adjuster. And so you've got wrong side touching wrong side, and you're going to come up one, and then you're going to slide in and over the already folded over fabric. Okay, and then we're going to adjust this. Sometimes you need to loosen up here so that you can even out. There we go. So now what you should have is the prong end with your slide adjuster on one end of your collar. Just like that. Okay, so we are at the last little bit and we are going to install our D-ring and the other piece of our clip. So the first thing we need to do is take our D-ring and place it on so that the curved part of the ring is facing the right side of your collar, just like so. So the flat part is going to be against the back side of the collar. And then we're going to take our clip and make sure that if you have a curve to your clip, like mine has a slight curve, that is the side that you want as the right side. And the flat part is what I have facing the back side. I hope that makes sense. What I'm going to do now is while I'm holding the D-ring here, I'm going to take my fabric and pull it through, and then we are going to fold over that end of fabric, and we are going to bring your D-ring up close to your clip for now. We will move that later. And you probably want a good 1.5 to 2 inches of space here.
Now, this is getting a little bit fiddly here. Okay, so I have my fabric folded down. My D-ring and my clip are here, and I'm going to fold this down, making sure that that D-ring stays out of your way. And we're going to sew a line along here, and you're going to backstitch back and forth really well to make sure it's secure. Once you've done that, then we end up sliding the D-ring down a little bit, and we're going to sew on the other side of the D-ring. I'm going to take that and do that off camera, and I will come back to you and we will take a look at our finished collar.
Okay, so I've taken care of that second line of stitching and our collar is done. And there you have it. So these are really great, strong collars. You can use up your Christmas fabrics, your Halloween fabrics, just regular seasonal fabric if you want a summer collar or one for every season. And these are great sellers at craft markets. They are probably one of my best sellers, and I hope you'll enjoy making this project. Please leave me a comment. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and I will be back in not too long from now with a tutorial to do a matching leash to go with this collar. Thank you so much for visiting my channel and for watching this video and spending some time with me. And I really hope that you enjoyed this, and we will see you soon. Until next time, bye friends.